Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream with a lot of sound coming from the game. I have to cut it down a bit, otherwise you will not hear me. And probably you did not hear my Tiger intro anyway. Ahoy, Cecilia Redder. Ahoy to you, and good evening, AJ Black. The two people who are already in the chat, and Juniper. Hey, nice to see everyone. So nice to see you, Juniper. Yeah, I hope this is better now with the music turned down a bit. I actually was listening to the sound of some locomotives. This is why I had it pumped up again. But for the stream, it is definitely better to have it a bit softer on our ears. Especially since today we are running a locomotive that is really loud. The Deutsche Krokodil, in its reincarnation as the Austrian Krokodil, the ÖBB 1020. Oh, you have Frankfurt. Yes, that is one of the perks as being an ambassador, but it is listed. But in my Epic Games Store, I cannot really use the key because it is a release key. But as ambassadors, we get a couple of days a free peek before. Hey, Perny, so nice to see you on the chat. But obviously, I can't say anything about it because I promised not to and signed an NDA. And this is good because obviously everyone can wait until the release is there. There is like a small time frame before the release when ambassadors can release content. I'm now NDA'd to, yes, the service provider that runs this ambassador program for DTG. And Spectre, hey, nice to see you. Yeah, but guys, this is obvious. Even without an NDA, it would be just mean to give away details that they want to disclose themselves to the general public, and so it is just all right. But maybe it can get one or the other bug out if ambassadors can look over it before. Oh damn! You subscribed for 12 months. Thank you so much, Perny, for resubscribing and the ongoing support, guys. So, but I did not want to talk about Frankfurt S-Bahn that is going to be released on Tuesday. What is not a secret because it is in the Steam news. And I will probably do a unboxing stream on Tuesday night. So if anyone is interested, have a first look at Frankfurt S-Bahn, then on Tuesday night after the official release we will do that. And now to the Krokodil. Mittenwaldbahn, we've been there 2 weeks ago, before there was my contribution to the May Madness sales on the Steam event that almost went wrong because my video was not shown and only after half an hour it was shown. Looking forward to that, says Juniper, to Tuesday. Yeah, then let's meet again on Tuesday, and then we can have an extensive look at the S-Bahn Frankfurt DLC. Well, it's a big one from what I've seen so far. A Joffrey time is the scenario that we played today. Same time, yes. DTG trying to have a weekend. Spectre, sorry to see that they mixed up the videos last week. I hope some people got introduced to the channel. A handful, I should say. Yeah, but not. It was not really a run. It was perhaps like 4 or 5 people more than usual that came to the channel and subscribed. My intro thing was really good. Thank you, Perny. And Yeah, and I did my best to advertise and promote the channel a bit and show what we can have in our presentation. In our presentations, what we are talking about and where people can find us. So, I thought that actually, yeah, I was quite happy with what I did in the video, and then it did not show. That was really a bummer. But after half an hour, they put it up. But a chunk of people had already left, of course. But well. So we're back on my own channel, and we're back in Austria, and we are back in 1989, and we have this really beautifully made locomotive. Eternal Abyss, hey yo, so nice to see you, Perny. Wait, what the fuck was that? Thomas the Tank Engine? Did you miss out on Thomas the Tank Engine altogether? And Juniper says Semmeringbahn is really a great route, but I need an Ebula to remember all the speed changes. It's actually not so hard. Good morning! A 111 has broken down on the way up the mountain. Get your loco ready and give it a push. This is what the scenario tells us. They added him to, yes, the Somerset Railway. They did, and they are talking about an add-on for Thomas. But I don't have it yet, so I cannot show you. It was before. I spilled coffee when I realized Thomas was a big reveal suspect. Well, obviously he is a nice engine. And I don't mind that they are doing this, but it is probably not the end of the scale that really gets me excited. But well, you don't need to own everything. Very polite Cecilia. Well, it shocked me a bit that you can actually drive it by W for forward and S for backwards. Well, and Eternal Abyss says, well, I was joking about Thomas a few weeks ago. Is it actually in game? It is. And Spectre says, I mean to each his own, but there were hundreds of rail enthusiasts on the stream waiting for some serious new product. Wait, you can drive it with WASD? Well, obviously not with A and D, but with W and S. At least so they said on this on the stream. I did not try it myself. Well, luckily we are in a scenario where we have all the time in the world, so that we can really enjoy our Krokodil locomotive, the ÖBB 1020, here number 14-5. They should have made it like a really complex steam loco, yeah. They apparently wanted it as something where the kids can get into the game. See the radar, oh ears, driving a train is so easy with ETCS, yes. This tornado steam engine with ETCS that Lofty, I think it was, put up on the Discord. That is a cool machine that really looks like steampunk. This here looks like electropunk, actually. It is a locomotive from the 1940s. Actually built in Germany in the 1940s and then migrated to Austria, more or less. Painted orange, blood orange, bloody orange, and now working as a beast of burden for the ÖBB in our year 1989. And Juniper, yeah, what safety system does the Thomas Tank Engine have? Apparently, no, but like we want 5-year-olds playing Train Sim World. How does that contribute to the future of the project for rail fans? Well, let's get them grow up and everything is good. No bashing of Thomas. It's not really my cup of tea, but well, it is also quite nice. What is also quite nice, and now I tried for the 6th or 7th time to get back to my Krokodil locomotive here, is that they actually animated and implemented a valve here that is necessary to make the Sifa work, because if you actually close this valve here, then the Sifa cannot really stop your train. because it does not have access to the brake cylinders. And here, by setting this valve to normal, you enable the Sifa. See, the radar says, you were right in everything except that part that I am awesome. Oh, yeah, my awesome moderator. This is what I said. How is that safe with the Sifa valve here? Well, obviously you should not operate it if you are sitting on a track with a train coming from the opposite end and put it up in your yard and turn it on. But actually this is a lot of locomotives of this period and later have valves of that kind. Any bystander could just nicely switch it. Well, those were the times when you could more or less rely on bystanders not to wreak havoc just for the fun of it. So, now we are in our locomotive. Maybe you should not crouch, then we see more. And you can see it is a bit like a boat, right? We have a big wheel here to control our transformer, more or less, and a lot of gauges that show us current, amperage, and voltage. We have an old radio. We have a lot of switches, and what I really like is that you typically start this locomotive with the pantos down, and you really have to go through a bit of a starting up from cold routine. See, both pantographs are still down, and now they want us to press and hold the battery supply set button for 1 second. And this is a lot of that reminds you of the book, for example, in SimRail, where you have to first generate some air to get the pantos up. So you have a partly implemented and animated rack for the pneumatic things. Spectre, geez, that wheel and the cab would not look out of place on the bridge of a cruise ship, right? Yeah. At least here you have an engine room, you have a rack for the pneumatic valves. You can go here between those thingies and you can isolate your driving motors. You've got six driving motors, 3 on each bogie. Bogies are interconnected, what is quite special on this locomotive. And you have a rack for all the switches. We can turn on, we cannot turn off the battery charger, but we can activate the Sifa and our Indusi, what is a precursor for the PZB. Here is the switch to select what PZB mode that we want. Here are the isolation switches for the other set of driving motors. And Bernie says this would be so cool in VR. Yeah, actually, that is a thing that can come nicely in VR. But this is really something that makes you say kudos to TSG. Animating an engine room like this adds so much to the immersion. Yeah, but now we have to find, if you switch off the object markers like I like to do, then you have to look for where is your battery supply set button. That is the battery turn on button, and it is hidden here. Battery supply set. So we are activating the battery so that we have now battery power on our cold locomotive. Now set the auxiliary compressor switch to on. Where is the auxiliary compressor switch? It is here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the auxiliary compressor. And unlike the book in SimRail, we don't have to hold the button down, but it is even animated. See, our little compressor is creating some air pressure here. On this gauge, you can see how it builds up, so that we are that we have enough air pressure, enough pressurized air to get our pantograph up, so that we can tap into the current that is in the overhead catenary. Obviously, we won't connect that by hand. Now they have enough for it, and we have to stand back in the driving position. Set the master switch to unlocked. This is here. We unlock our cab here. It is like cab activation. Set the pantograph control to raise. And we can see how the pantograph is connecting. Now we have a physical connection with the overhead catenary. But our main circuit breaker is still open. So we get the main circuit breaker and set it. Now we have the main circuit breaker closed. We have a voltage here. I always think we should get the voltage before we activate the main circuit breaker, after the pantograph touches the overhead catenary, but maybe this is different on this locomotive. So with closing the main circuit breaker, we have a primary voltage here. Now we set the battery charger to on, so that actually what we took out of the battery gets back into the battery. Control supply. This is like the control circuits. We need to do this so that we have power for all our stuff on the locomotive. For example, the compressor, automatic control, and now we are actually getting some air in our main reservoir. And after the main reservoir, also in our brake pipe. Now that we are getting pressurized air from our automatic control, we can turn off the auxiliary compressor. We don't need it anymore because we have the big compressor running now. We can close the door, but before that I'd just like to check that we have tail lights on. I think we have, but still. Yes, tail lights are on. Camille 1989 Pospo. Hi, I like your stream. That is great. Thank you so much for appearing on the chat and letting me know. Happy that you're with us. Alright, then we have to set the blowers. The blowers, this is the coolers for the driving motors. We've talked about this in the Baureihe 111. Now we have to wait for the main reservoir pressure to build up, what takes a bit. You can see the red hand is slowly climbing. While we are waiting for that, we can have a look on our dashboard. You can already turn on the wipers. We only have run and stop, and they are not so super great, those wipers, especially in the upper area. Alright, now we have at least 3 bars. There is no seat, no, I'm so sorry. And Camille 1989 post subscribe. Thank you so much for subscribing with Prime. Thank you for the support. Now we apply the loco brake. The loco brake, you see this, it always switches back into the hold position after applying it. So you really have to hold it if you want to apply something like 4 bars in the brake cylinders. Now we're holding the locomotive with a loco brake. We can unlock our brake valve, go from shutdown into running, and then in first application. Now we're tending to the lights. The moment we still have tail lights on both ends. Those red tail lights we switch off, and we turn on the white front lights. And now we have proper lights here for our locomotive. If that is not enough and we need more light, then we can actually use to full lights by using this switch, or to half lights and have it like this. Now that we have everything up and running, enough air in our brake system, we can finally release the handbrake that was holding the locomotive while it was dead. It is a handbrake that works mechanically, where we just crank the brake shoes away from the wheels. Now the handbrake is released. You can set the master switch to forward. You can see our funny little Indusi gadget here. The blue lamp does not show an 85 or something, but you can see that it is giving you a 95, and the other lamp in the middle will be, if you switch it to PZB mode M, then you get the lamp in the middle, and you can see an embossing of 75, what gives you the speeds that you have to get to in the Indusi system. 2 weeks ago we had a video about this, and the right one is the yellow lamp for the 1000 Hertz monitoring. Okay, now they want us to set the train brake to running. As soon as we do this, we are relying on the loco brake, and as soon as we release the loco brake, we can start. We're starting as a shunting service, so 25 is our maximum. What else do we have here on the dashboard? We have an indicator that tells us our tap changer position and the rep one for braking. Dynamic brakes we access by switching this switch here from motoring to braking. So a bit like in the F7 or the old version of the SD40 in America, we are using our big power wheel for braking after changing this around. Yes. What else do we have here? We have a telephone to talk to the signaler, but this is for whatever reason not working. You can even have a banking comm here. It is called loco-to-loco communication. If we had a second locomotive at the end of the train, we could use this by using this lock-to-lock button. Here are our sanders, front and back. Here we can get the water out of whatever system, and here is for releasing the brakes. A brake release button, in case that our wheel slip protection system is slowing us down. Well, let's now tell the signaler that we are on our way. We have a limit of 40 here, but since we are starting as a shunting service, we cannot go faster than 25, I should say. So, releasing the locomotive brakes, and then turn around our wheel. This is the Sifa pedal here. Have to let it go every now and then. Here is our speed clock. It's a funny speed clock because it has two scales, one for going forward and one for going backward. So we can actually go minus 25 kilometers per hour here. That's what I meant, right? The wiper is not really helping a lot while we are standing because we cannot see the signals properly. But we can see that here is Fahrverbot aufgehoben. That means we can pass. Still have not gotten a proper signal. They thought of everything, yes. But not of the wiper. We're getting HP 2 in the German system. In Austria it is frei mit 40. So we are limited to 40. And maybe we are a train now. A train service. No longer a shunting service, but a train service. Light locos can run as trains. Halt erwarten. Signal zeigt Halt. Since we are now a train, this shunting signal that would prohibit us passing is no longer applicable to us. For us. Frei mit 40 sounds like a Spiegel bestseller aimed at middle-aged people in an identity crisis. Yeah, Spectre, you are right. Now we had to prepare for the signal being at stop, but it is not. We're actually getting a full green signal at this point. So as soon as we are out, I actually tweaked a bit my engine innie, so that we have better FPS now, and it works quite well, in my opinion. Even at Innsbruck and with rain. Frei mit 40. Well, no wonder they then introduced the Frei mit 60 also. After a while. So, as soon as we are through those switches, we can accelerate to 60, line speed. While we are passing through Innsbruck West. It's quite a lot of cranking with this big wheel actually. You can see in this indicator here, if you are passing another full turn of the wheel or half turn, because between half turns it does not really make a big difference, I think. We have 6 driving motors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can see how much current they are drawing. If they are drawing too much current, they might cut out. So we do not want to do this. But as long as we are running light, this is probably not a problem. Now we're probably too fast around the corner here, even with braking a little. That was the Sifa lady. Very nice offices. Yeah, we were too fast around the corner. Spieglein, Spieglein an der Wand, wer ist die schönste im ganzen Land? Ist CD Radar. Maybe our Krokodil. And we don't need to stop, we can go to the passing area at Martinswand. Innsbruck, Hötting. Is it not? Well, who is the schönste im ganzen Land? Denn the Taurus, the Vectron. Vectron versus Krokodil ist Juniper, yeah. So now we're getting into the incline. That means we can really crank up our power wheel. Since we do not have a train behind us, we do not need to turn on the Zugheizung. So it is okay that the indicator tells us Zugheizung aus. Train heating is off. The level crossings that we're passing here are secured with a level crossing safety system, so we don't need to honk. We're just getting those white and black posts telling us where the axle counter for switching them on is. And passing stations or stopping points, crank down a bit because it is getting flatter, and then crank it up again. This is the fringe area for the FPS, I think. If we don't freeze here, then we don't freeze at all. I don't know exactly why. Because there's... maybe because of the whole valley opening up in front of us. Instrument dimmer, yes, we have this too. And there are even more switches. Instrument lights. A warming cabinet we have. Cap heating. A screen heater. The switches are there. The installations probably do not work. But we will switch on the train heating later, because the train that we are supposed to rescue is a passenger train, so there are actually people sitting in those cars that we are supposed to rescue, and they're waiting for us, not knowing that we took our time when explaining the locomotive. Their locomotive has shut down probably. So I don't know, maybe the train heating is off and those poor guys have to wait for us to make our way up to them. So maybe they will be happy if we can provide the train heating then. I should have used the car as the CD radar. Well, or the subway. That's Hochziel, no? We're not stopping. Obviously not. Why should we? Now we're getting closer to our stopping point at Martinswand. It is this passing area that has this half gallery to protect the trains from falling rocks. So super nice how the mountains are in the clouds. So, this is the entry signal for Martinswand. And it is indicating us that the next signal is at red. Indusi. No magnet here. Nevertheless, we have to prepare to slow down and stop at the signal. Switch. Passing area. And you can see there is a train waiting at the passing area. But this is not the train that we are supposed to rescue. This is a train that cannot proceed because the other train is blocking the line. So the dispatcher stopped the train here. Because if the train goes on, then we cannot get to the broken down train anymore. So luckily this train could actually stop here, or actually had to go back to this area here, so that we can pass it here and go into the occupied block where the broken down train is sitting. Always careful when passing a train like this, because you never know if there are some lunatics opening the doors, hopping out. And up ahead in the distance you can see a shimmering light. That is our exit signal here. So we're not stopping at the exit signal, but we're stopping before the switch, what makes sense. So, the broken down train is in the next section. Call the signal and request entry to couple up. Before we do that, holding the train with the loco brake. Before we do that, how we just waited for us to do this. Let's have another view at the situation. So in this passing area, this woman has to wait for us to get the other train out of the way. So she's waiting too with all the passengers in her car. At least she still has a train heating running. And yeah, both of us, this train and we only have one single signal, that one. So how do we know who of us is supposed to drive as soon as the signal switches to green? That is another thing that we already know from the Niedertalbahn group exit signals. And you can see those signs in the overhead catenary. Fahrwegende Signale, a red E, that in connection with this situation here marks the spot that we cannot pass without spatting. So this is why we stopped here a bit away of it, but this is actually the spatting point. Passing this red E, when the signal is red, we spat here already and not at the signal at front. Group signals, we will get to this in the presentation once more, because that is also a quite interesting and out of the ordinary situation. What we also have here is one of those peculiarities in the Austrian system. Typically, you know all those markers, Grenzmarken, Freibalken, we had in the Dutch system, that typically tell you that if you stop your train, that not one part of your train is going beyond this marker, then you are safe that the other train can pass on the other track. Yeah. But if that for some reason, because trains get bigger or whatever is no longer true, but this thing is still there, then it gets this red marking in the middle, and then you have a marked Foul-Marker, eine markierte Grenzmarkierung. And this obviously happened to this one here. So this is why we are a bit away of this marked marker. And you can see that those two E's are a bit apart from each other. So before we actually go in this and rescue the train, let's have a look at the presentation that is connected with it, but maybe not quite now. Let's first ask the signaler, and let's see how the signaler actually has, what solution the signaler has for letting us into this blocked section where the train is sitting in, because he can obviously not switch the signal to green because the track is occupied. Cannot give us a green, because then we have freie Fahrt and we can run out into the section. That is no good. So maybe he makes use of this little light here. We have different situations where we can be allowed to go into an occupied train section of track that is occupied by a train. Let's see how our signaler is doing this here. By switching on a flashing white light. And yeah, we all know that from Polish system, a flashing white light. We know it from the German system, a flashing white light set as one Ersatzsignal that we can use if a signal for whatever reason cannot be switched to green because all the circuitry is prohibiting it from being switched to green, especially because the track is not clear. Then we can sometimes use an Ersatzsignal. We know that in German regulations, actually, the track needs to be clear, so use Ersatzsignal. It cannot be occupied. That is just one particularity that we see in this situation. How can we get an Ersatzsignal if the track is occupied? In German rules, this should not be possible, because Ersatzsignal, then we can go with 40, don't need to go on side. But yeah, let's see how we can maybe salvage this and get this into a regulation that makes sense for us. Presentation. Gruppensignal, Ersatzsignal, Vorsichtssignal in the Austrian signaling system. Again, what I got is from the Eisenbahnbau- und Betriebsverordnung from May 2025, last updated, and then the Dienstvorschrift, what is more or less the Fahrdienstvorschrift of ÖBB Infra from December 2024, version 14. This is where I got my stuff from. So this is more or less our situation, our track. Passing area, 2 tracks, 1 switch, and then a single line. And in this single line, there is our train. At some point, our train broke down and is now blocking this locomotive in front, then the cars. And how can we get this thing out of the way now? So what we have in signals, there are some signals that are in front of this train. They are most probably clear, because this train actually was supposed to pass those signals and go on. So main signal, distance signal is probably showing a green light and clearing the track for this train, but the train cannot go on for some reason because the engine broke or whatever. At the back of the train, obviously, we must have a red signal because the block is occupied and nothing changes because the train is not moving out of the way. So we have a red signal here for the starter signal, exit signal, whereas the home signal is green. We have already discussed that in our situation here, this is a group signal because it is one signal that applies for more than one track here. Both tracks are ruled by this one signal here, and so that the trains actually have a marker until they can go before interfering with this signal, because obviously not both trains can go up to the signal because then they would collide in front of the signal. We have those E signs that are called Signal Fahrwegende. We have a video about this actually and the concept of Fahrwegende, but here they are used in context for the SPAD markers for this group exit signal. Sometimes they are missing. I'm not entirely sure whether they have been forgotten or if there is a different ruling then in these places where they are not in the overhead catenary. So sometimes it is advised to stay at least so far away from your group signal that you're not passing one of those red, white, red markers that announce the signal. But if you have a red E, you cannot pass it. You have to stop in front of it if the signal is red. And if it is switched to green, then there needs to be some extra communication between the dispatcher and the train drivers. So even if the signal is switching to green in a situation like this with the group signal, you cannot just happily put your foot down and run your train, because maybe it was not for you but for the train on the track next to you. So in those situations, typically there is some provision in the operating rules that you cannot start your train unless you have a special clearance from the dispatcher or whoever is in charge for dispatching the trains there, so allowing you on the radio, train number so and so, you are allowed to depart, and the other train has to wait. So this is the SPAD line here. This is why this other train was waiting there, and this is why we have to wait here also in this situation. So how can we actually be allowed in this section that is occupied by this train? We have already seen we cannot switch it to green because this train is here, and then we cannot get a green signal that indicates freie Fahrt, that indicates the track is clear, and it is obviously not. So typically the wiring in the signaling system prohibits the signal from being set to green. Can we go with a shunting service? You know, probably just give us those two white lights diagonally arranged that we often get in German signaling, in British signaling, that just allows us to pass the signal but be cautious as a shunting service. Yeah, problem is we are on the open track. We are not in a station area, and shunting outside of station area is typically a no-go. Sometimes it can be done with Anschlussstellen and stuff like this, but typically there is no shunting on the open track. Therefore, we get a marker up until what point shunting is allowed, and no shunting is allowed beyond this point. Our Verschubhalttafel in Austria, Rangierhalttafel in German, or in Polish system, for example, you just have this half disc without any text on it. The meaning is quite always the same. You cannot pass it, so we cannot go past this point as a shunting service. So letting us pass this signal as a shunting service doesn't help a lot, because we couldn't go past this limit of shunt board. So we cannot go and rescue this train as a shunting service. So what can we do then? Yeah, this is the Verschubhalttafel. What our dispatcher resorted to is this, giving us this flashing white light, and it is called in Austrian system just the same as it is called in the German system, but not with the abbreviation set as one. It is called an Ersatzsignal, a replacement signal, that we can use in German system typically if for whatever reason we cannot switch the signal, but we know from other sources that the track is clear. That is a prerequisite in German signaling. In Austrian signaling, it is not so clear that we can use the Ersatzsignal only if the track is clear behind the signal that we want to use the Ersatzsignal on. But we will see what additional measures we have to resort to for getting this out of the way. So Ersatzsignal, This flashing white light allows us to pass this signal. We are not getting any information about what the next signal will be showing. Unlike a green signal, for example, if we get the green signal, then we can rely that the next signal is not at red, because we would, or yeah, if we have a distance signal, the distance signal would show us that the next signal is red. We can just go through at any rate. Yeah, but here with this, we don't have any information. With the distance signal system, it is not so much not so much of a difference, but with like block systems, where you get the indication that 2 blocks ahead are free, then we don't get any information about that here. So what does it require us? So this is the part in the rules where you can actually find it, describe this Ersatzsignal. And what does it do? It limits us to 40, just like in the German system, where we cannot go faster than 40 after the Ersatzsignal. But most notably, it does not limit us to going on site. It gives us a maximum of 40, and this typically can only work if the track is clear. You can still maybe not know if the switches are set correctly and if there is maybe some problems with flank protection, but allowing us to go into the block with a limit of 40 and not requiring us to go on site typically has the prerequisite that we know from whatever reason, from whatever source, that the track is clear. Here in this situation, the track is not clear. Nevertheless, we're getting the Ersatzsignal here, because that is, from, if we look at the signal in the game, the only thing that it can show. It can show green, it can show red, and it can show this white light flashing. So what would we need to do to salvage this? We must somehow get an additional requirement that we have to go on site. Maximum 40 maybe, but plus on site. And going on site, according to Austrian rules, is typically not faster than 30. Kamil, you're back. Nice to see you back. And how do we get this on top of the signal with an order? I think there is, in this situation, no other way than just radioing to our driver as a dispatcher and ordering the driver to not go faster than on site. The signal alone with a flashing white would only limit us to 40, so that would not be enough, because if we go in with 40 in this track and then this train, we don't actually know where it is, it's just behind a corner or in a tunnel, we run into the train inadvertently if we just go with 40 at this point. So probably we need to get an order. Most probably we have to get an order from the dispatcher telling us not to go faster than on site, and then we are limited to 30 kilometers anyway. And yeah, this can be found in those parts of the regulations. Not in our situation here, but wondering what a Signalnachahmer, signal repeater, would show you if you're approaching a signal that is showing the Ersatzsignal. There is, first of all, this signal repeater with the lowered bar for the red signal, and then I have found, not in the current rules, but on the Wikipedia site of Austrian railway signaling, an aspect that looks like this, like the signal repeater for the red, but with a flashing white dot. I have not been able to find from what rules this aspect is derived from, so that it got on the Wikipedia page. In the current rules, I have not found this thingy, but maybe it still exists somewhere, or has at least existed. So quite interesting. You can have a special aspect for the signal repeater if you're shown an Ersatzsignal on the signal that you are approaching. Yeah, complicated, right? The signal itself is not enough to let us into this section and limit us to on-site. We need an order for it. If we think back to the German system, was there any way to show us a signal that does not only limit us to 40, but also limits us to go not faster than on site. And of course there is ZS7, the Vorsichtssignal, the yellow V, 3 lights arranged in a yellow V, and this, unlike the Ersatzsignal, limits us to on-site just by force of the signal. And something like this exists now, at any rate, in Austrian signaling as well. So you can see this is a more modern signal hub with more lamps and more possibilities to show different aspects. And some of those signals have a little red lamp that can flash. And that is the Austrian version of the Vorsichtssignal. And that one, according to the rules, has the same meaning as an Ersatzsignal plus the on-site requirement. Our signal that we have here, our signal that was used in 1989, cannot show this. It does not have this little red lamp that can flash, obviously. So we probably have to resort to this Ersatzsignal and order the driver to stay on site in whatever Fahranweisung they get to go into this section of track. But if you find a signal like this, either totally dark and with a flashing red, or showing red and with a flashing red in the Austrian system, this is more or less the same as in German signaling, the yellow V signal, ZS7. So you can find it here. It limits you on site, and on site is maximum 30 kilometers. And here, to compare with the German system, that would be the equivalent of ZS1, and this would be the equivalent of ZS7. Yeah. Ersatzsignal, Vorsichtssignal, shown here in connection with a group signal. So not so super simple and trivial, our little situation that we have in our scenario here. Next thing, what is also not so super simple, is actually what are we when we are entering this section. We've passed the signal with our order not to go faster than on site, passing this Ersatzsignal. The flashing white lamp turns off as soon as the train has passed the signal. And now we are in the section together with the other train. Are we a shunting service now? Are we a train service now? In German operating rules, we would still be a train service, Zugfahrt auf besonderen Auftrag, and a Sperrfahrt, a train service into a blocked, occupied section of track, but still a train service. In Austria, this is a bit different, because now in Austria we are a so-called Nebenfahrt, what is not shunting and not a train. So a bit of a different system, a different way of thinking than in that compared to the German system. Here this is actually a third category. We are not a train service and we are not a shunting service, but we are a side service, and what translates Nebenfahrt. And there are different kinds of Nebenfahrten, and we are a so-called NM-Fahrt, most probably because it applies only to this one block where the train is sitting into. An NO-Fahrt would be Fahrt would be a special service of this kind that covers the whole length between one station and the other. But here we only have one block to cover, so there would be probably an NM-Fahrt. It's typically something for special vehicles, also Nebenfahrten, but getting into an occupied track is a Nebenfahrt. You can find the rules here for Nebenfahrt.